Hi. So I've been debating whether or not to buy one of those new MacBook Pro i9s to see if there's any way to stop the thermal throttling where as soon as you run something like Prime 95 or a intense GPU using application that the machine throttles itself down. And the reality of the case is that there's no need for me to do that because somebody who's actually far smarter and more knowledgeable than am has already done some tests and figured out what the cause of the problem here. And that is random person X on Reddit, and he made an excellent post in Reddit/r/MacBook Pro that I suggest everybody read. The TLDR of this post is that the issue is not that the processor itself is getting too hot and then thermal throttling because the CPU is too warm. Rather, the issue is that the VRMs that power the CPU are not able to deliver the power that they're configured for. So, Intel tells the companies this is how much power you should configure your VRMs to use. However, these VRMs get so hot before they're able to deliver that amount of power that they're unable to continue with that level of power, and as a result, the CPU then throttles itself down. But it doesn't just throttle, so it's constantly going up and down and up and down and up and down. And he's come up with this very ingenious way to hack through this, and he's even trying to create some daemons so that it automatically occurs on boot so that you get better performance out of this machine. So this is actually worse than a lot of people thought. If the issue was simply that the MacBook Pro is thermal throttling, you could open up the case, put better thermal paste in there, and set the fans to run fast all the time, and you will get good performance out of your MacBook Pro. However, since the issue is not the cooling system of the CPU itself, but rather that the VRMs on the board are not capable of delivering the power that that processor needs, even if you open the machine up and use great thermal paste, even if you liquid metal it and have the fans running at full RPM all the time, it's still never going to stop throttling unless you figure out a way to make those VRMs deliver the amount of power that they're supposed to. Not only is this bad from the standpoint of performance, and not only is it an unfixable performance issue outside of reconfiguring the machine using these hacks, which is still never going to bring it to the performance level of a machine with a motherboard that was designed properly, but it's also likely going to affect the longevity of the machine. As anybody who watches this channel regularly knows, it's very common that when these boards have failures, that the issue is that one of the CPU vCore MOSFETs winds up delivering a spike of 12 volts to the CPU, and bye-bye CPU. Sometimes you can replace the MOSFETs and they didn't deliver 12 volts to the CPU and you're good, but a lot of the times the CPU got a spike of 12 volts and it's dead. Very common issue for me. And if that was happening on the older machines that did not have this VRM power management issue, I can only imagine it exploding on these new machines that do have this issue, but it's going to be at least a year or two until we really see them coming in and understand if this is a failure mode. The second part that's very interesting about these new 2010 MacBook Pros. Did I just say 2010? I meant 2018. The second thing that's interesting about these 2018 MacBook Pros is that according to Mac Rumors, they got rid of the port that allows you to recover the data from them. So as I've discussed in my older videos, these machines from 2016 onwards, if you bought either the Touch Bar model or you bought the 12-inch model, have the solid-state drive soldered onto the board. This means that you cannot upgrade it. It also means that if your last backup was yesterday and your machine failed today while you were working on something, you cannot simply take the drive out of it and then put it into another machine to get everything that you were working on prior to your backup failing. It means that you're screwed. Your data is essentially stuck in the machine and it's gone. Now, there was this one tool that Apple came out with that's pictured in the article that allows you to recover data from these machines by using this little lifeboat connector. So there's a connector on the board. It's a jumper wire that attaches the motherboard to the SSD on the board. And if you remove that jumper and then plug in this thing called the lifeboat tool, which I linked to I'm going to link to in the description, I talked about in a previous video, you would be able to then connect it as an external hard drive to another machine. This was the only way to get data off of one of these if you were unable to fix the motherboard because the SSD is soldered onto the board. And it appears that Apple has removed that connector. That connector is no longer on the board. So not only does this new machine happen to throttle in a way that is not going to be fixable by the average end user because it is a result of the VRMs on the board, not the fans and the heatsink and the thermal paste. But it also removed one of the main features that would allow a repair shop to easily recover data from one of these machines if the board dies without actually having to fix the motherboard. Adding insult to injury, these machines still use the butterfly keyboard that was used in years past that resulted in class action lawsuits for the keyboards failing, and while they did admit that there is a new generation of keyboards, that new generation of keyboards, they have said nothing about whether or not they've addressed the fact that their that they're failing. It's just supposed to maybe feel better or type better, but they didn't address whether or not this is actually fixing the failure rates with the older keyboards. And my personal favorite of them all is that if you want to attach your $1,000 iPhone to your $3,000 MacBook, you still need to buy a $70 USB-C dongle from Apple, because from the reports that I've heard, that those cheap or knockoff dongles that you can buy for $30 on Amazon that will work with the Dell XPS, that will work with the ThinkPad P50, will not work with a MacBook Pro. So, if you would like to buy a new MacBook Pro, well, you have my sincerest condolences and sympathies. That's it for today, and as always, I hope you learned something. Make sure that you always think different, and subscribe for new videos, and yeah, I'm out. They have to be trolling. This has to be a troll. This is a troll. Somebody within the company wants to see how much their end users will put up with before they say, F it, I'm done with you. I don't even think it's design flaws at this point. I think it's trolling. I'll be honest with you. Somebody at that company is just laughing their ass off at all of this, and I don't know. I give up.